If I were a dead leaf, thou mightest bear. You might have carried me if I were a dead leaf. So, this is the wishful thinking of the poet. If I were a swift cloud to fly with thee. If if I were a cloud, I could have flown with thee. A wave to pant beneath thy power. If I were a wave, I could have been affected by your force and power and share, and at in that condition I could have shared the impulse. The strong sudden desire to do something is the impulse of your strength, of thy strength, that is the strength of the west wind, only less free than thou. Then I could have been less free than you because I'm a mortal human being. So here, Shelley gets more emotional and more personal. He says, but there is a difference between a human being and the element of nature, that is west wind. And he says, I am less free than you. I am chained. Human beings are controlled by the society. That is what Shelley here wants to describe. Then thou, O uncontrollable. But he envies, he is jealous of the free spirit of the west wind. He says, you are uncontrollable. Nobody can control you. If even I were as in my boyhood. And he says, I was like that, uncontrollable when I was a boy, and could be the comrade of thy comrade, friend, companion, comrade of thy wanderings, your journey over heaven, over the sky. I could have accompanied you in my boyhood because I was a free spirit then. As then went to outstrip, exceed in speed, okay, outstrip the sky, like the sky. Scarce seemed a vision. He says, in that condition, in my boyhood, I was as controllable as you, and it was not impossible for me. I could never have striven as thus with thee in prayer in my sore need. And in that condition, I could never have tried hard to achieve your strength in my prayer as thus. Now I pray that your strength will enter me. I need that to change the world with the help of his poetry, because as I told you earlier, Shelley was a rebellious person. He was a revolutionary kind of thing. He was against he was always against the norms of the society, the traditions and customs. Okay, as thus with the in his personal life also, in his married life also, in his love relationship also, in his university days also, he was just a rebel. So it was a reference, it's a reference to all those personal things in his life. As thus with thee in prayer in my sore need, oh lift me. Now it's a prayer. Now he asks something from the wild west wind. And what is that? He says, lift me as a wave. I want to become a wave to be lifted by you. I want to become a leaf so that you could carry me with your force. I want to become a cloud so that you can blow me out with your force. So he wants, now again, this is romanticism. The speaker, the poet, always equates his own personal things, condition, his personal life to the nature. Oh, lift me as a wave, a leaf, a cloud. I fall upon the thorns of life. thorns of life. It's a metaphor for the tragedies in life, for the difficulties in life, for the problems in life. And Shelley was during this period when he wrote this poem. Now this is again an important poem belonging to an important period in his creative life, that is life as a poet, that is the year 1819. Many poems belong to this period, and there is a personal touch of tragedy because recently, before the publication of writing of this poem, he had lost his son. Okay, so he was in his personal life as well as in his public life, he was in difficult situations. There were so many miseries, there were so many tragedies going on around, and it is his reaction to those things. Oh, lift me as a wave, a leaf, a cloud, I fall upon the thorns of life. So he says, thorns, cutting. So he says, life is full of thorns. And life, I'm bleeding. I bleed. Okay. A heavy weight of hours had chained, weight of hours. That is the burden, stress, tension of life. A heavy weight of hours had chained and bowed one true like thee. So he says, and these lines, this couplet of the fourth canto describes his personal condition. He says, there is a lot of weight, there is a lot of tension, and which has chained me, which has imprisoned me, and bowed. I'm forced to bow down. I'm forced to become weak in front of these difficulties. But I, but I am one too like thee. That is, but I'm also like you. I'm also as free spirit, as quick, as swift, as powerful, as terrific as you. Tameless, tameless, the thing that cannot be controlled. Okay, so west wind is uncontrollable. So just like that, Shelley himself was uncontrollable. He was a rebel and swift and proud. So he says, but I'm in a difficult situation. I'm bleeding. I have fallen upon the thorns of life. That is, there are so many tragic incidents happening to me, and that's why I need power. And that's why I pray you. I need your power. So this is the fourth canto. Now let us turn to the last part, last section, or last canto of the poem. This is again a prayer. Make me thy lyre. So he says, make me your instrument. Even lyre is the musical instrument, even as the forest is. So he says, there is forest. What if my leaves are falling? So he says, what if I am in difficult period, I am in a difficult situation. What if my leaves are falling like its own, like the forest? So mine condition and the condition of the forest, is also shedding leaves. So I am also undergoing so many difficulties, problems in my life. The tumult of thy mighty harmonies, but the sound, the noise of your harmonies, that is the noise, the music of the west wind, the terrible sound, the music of the west wind, will take from both a deep autumnal tone, sweet though in sadness. So he says, your power will take away from me as well as the forest the sadness. So because of your power, because of your force, the sadness will be gone away. Be thou spirit fierce, my spirit. So it says, you become my spirit. You are a fierce, you are a terrible spirit, you are a strong spirit, so strong soul. You are a source of inspiration, and be enter into my mind, enter in me. You be mine, impetus one. Impetus, acting quickly without thinking. Drive my dead thoughts. So he says, I am disturbed. My thoughts are as if dead thoughts. So drive away those dead thoughts, drive away those depressions in my life, drive my dead thoughts over the universe. And it says, these are the dead thoughts, as if these are the dead thoughts, and drive those thoughts over the universe, these destructive, these revolutionary thoughts, like withered leaves to quicken a new birth. So that just as you drive the dried leaves, uh, you scatter them, so just scatter my thoughts so that they could be converted into a new birth, there could be change. And by the incantation of this verse, and by the incantation mantrochar, a series of words used as a magic spell or a charm, that is incantation. So he says, and by the incantation of this verse, by the repetition of this song or this verse, scatter as from an unextinguished hearth. Hearth is the space in front of the fireplace, and unextinguished, that is burning. Scatter as from an unextinguished hearth ashes and sparks. So it says scatter the ashes, scatter the sparks, so that life will blow, life will start again burning, there will be change. My words among mankind. He says, take away my words and scatter them to the mankind, as if you scatter the, the ashes from the still burning fire. Be through my lips to unawakened earth. So he says, take my words from my lips to the unawakened earth, to the people who are sleeping, to and um, make them change themselves. So change what is bad, whatever there is injustice, whatever there is tragic, whatever there is not good, it should be changed into good. The trumpet of a prophecy, O wind. So he says, you become the trumpet of a prophecy. Trumpet again is a musical instrument. Okay. So he says, you be the trumpet of a prophecy. Prophecy is the telling of what will happen in future. O wind, if winter comes, can spring be far behind? So, this is one of the most beautiful lines in the whole of poetry. Okay, and if winter comes, if tragedy is there, then good things cannot be far behind. If if bad times are here, good times will be coming. Good times are coming. So the poem ends on a note of optimism. If winter comes, can spring be far behind? If winter is there here, if death is there here, then life is not far behind. Life is there. If night is there, if darkness is there, then it will be definitely followed by light and hope and revolution and change. So this is a great poem of the age of Romanticism, written by Percy B Shelley, and it talks about change. The theme is death, and the theme is destruction and preservation. The theme is hope, the theme is change, and the instrument of this change is the powerful west wind. Okay, it's a metaphor for the spirit, for the soul in the poet. Okay, we'll stop here, and thank you. Hello, friends. Today, let us discuss a very beautiful poem by a great poet of the second generation of romantic poets in the history of English literature, that is Percy Bysshe Shelley, popularly known as P.B. Shelley. Um, Shelley was born in 1792 and he died in 1822. So he died at a very young age. That is again a typical characteristic feature of the second generation romantic poets, because another very great poet belonging to this generation, John Keats, he also died very young at the age of 26, 28, and Shelley died at the age of 30 only. Ode to the West Wind is a very famous ode as far as the study of English poetry is concerned, as far as the history of English poetry is concerned. This is an ode. Ode is a poem. It's basically a lyrical poem. Lyrical poetry is the poetry which has music at as its main quality. It has rhythm, and the word comes from the Greek word lyre, lyre. During the classical period, lyric was a song sung um, on or accompanied by a musical instrument called lyre. So, lyric is a word of Greek origin. Later on, it is applied to the poetry which has musical quality, which has rhythm in that, which has a rhyme in that, and it is the expression of the personal feelings of a poet. So this is a very brief introduction to the genre, to the type of poem known as an ode. Ode again is of Greek origin. There were Horatian odes, Pindaric odes, lesbian odes. So these are the types of odes. Later on in English poetry, it became a poem of address, a poem of commemoration of some public event, or the foundation of some great university, remembering of some great event. And it is typically addressed to somebody or something. Ode upon a Grecian urn, Ode to a Nightingale, very famous odes by John Keats. So, Ode to Nightingale was addressed to the bird, the sweet singing bird Nightingale. The Ode to the Grecian urn was addressed to the urn. Okay, the Grecian urn. Just like that. This poem, Ode to the West Wind, it is again addressed to the west wind, the powerful west wind. And this poem was written in 1819. Again, it is the expression of Shelley's personal feelings. There were lots of happenings in his personal life, as well as the life of England as a nation. There were very disturbing political events, and this poem is a sort of reaction, because Shelley was a rebel. He had, at a very young age, he had declared himself as an atheist. Even he had published a paper on his being an atheist, Nastik. So and for that reason, at that time, he was expelled from the university. Uh, mm, so Shelley was a rebel. He was a very controversial kind of person, and he was very passionate. And all these things are reflected in this particular poem. Now let us talk about the structure of this poem. This poem, this ode, is it consists of 5 sections or cantos, or 5 stanzas. Okay, and each stanza, it's a special stanza of 14 lines, and again those 14 lines are made up of 3 tercets. Tercet is a stanza of 3 lines, and at the end of these 3 tercet there is the fourth stanza again. It is the couplet. So 3 tercets followed by the fourth one, that is one couplet. So this is known as, and there is a typical rhyming scheme, and it is the rhyming scheme is, it is known as tarzarima, or the third rhyme. Why? It is like ABA, BCB, CDC, etc. So it is the interlaced kind of rhyme is there, one by another. So this is the terzarima, or the third rhyme. So these 5 sections are there, and or 5 cantos are there, which are again made up of 14 lines each. And how these 14 lines are arranged? There are 3 tercets, means 12 lines, and one couplet um, at the end of those 3 tercets. So this is overall the structure of this ode, and this ode is addressed to the west wind, that is the wind coming from the west direction, and it is moving towards the east direction. The first canto describes the effect of the wind on earth. What happens to earth? Okay, how the leaves they run, how the leaves are carried, the dead leaves are falling on the ground and they are carried by the force of the west wind, how the seeds are carried uh, by the force of the west wind. The second canto describes what happens as a result of this wind, what happens to the sky, what happens to the clouds. Okay, and the third canto is related to the effect of the west wind on the sea. Okay, what happens? It's effect on the sea, on the water, because as we know that earth, air, earth, sky, and water, earth, air and water, these are the 3 major elements. So the west wind, Shelley very beautifully describes how this west wind affects these 3 elements. Okay, हे जी 3 तत्व आहेत त्या 3 तत्वांवर कसा परिणाम होतो वेस्ट विंडचा. सो, and in the fourth canto, Shelley describes uh, how this west wind is related to his own life. Okay, his own personality and his wish. And the last canto is a kind of request to the spirit of the west wind. Another interesting thing about the title of the poem is that in the in Latin, Hebrew, and Greek languages, the words for wind, breath, soul, inspiration are all identical and related. So here west wind means breath, here west wind means soul, here west wind is also an inspiration. So Shelley is here praying to that spirit uh, of the west wind, which is a kind of soul, or which is in the form of kind of inspiration for him to become a great poet. And with the help of this west wind, as he says in the last canto, he wants to spread his message of revolution across the world with the help of this west wind. And what is this message? This message is for the change for the betterment of the world. We'll read the poem line by line and try to interpret, try to explain. I read the first canto. O wild west wind. So this is the typical beginning of an ode. The ode is always, it is the apostrophe. It is in the form of the address, and plus there is again in the very first line we find alliteration, that is the repetition of the same consonant. O wild west wind, thou breath of autumn's being. So he calls west wind as wild, as well as it is the breath of autumn's existence. Autumn, that is the season. O wild west wind, thou breath of autumn's being. Thou means you. It is the archaic word. It is the old word for you, and it is now archaic because it is not used in the day-to-day conversation. It is used in poetry only. O wild west wind, thou breath of autumn's being, thou from whose unseen presence the leaves dead, the dead leaves that fall in the autumn season, are driven like ghosts from an enchanter fleeing. So here the simile used for the leaves is that of the ghosts. So with the power, with the force of the west wind, the leaves fly as if some ghosts are running away from the enchanter. Enchanter, mantrik, one who controls the ghosts. ओके. भूतांना, आत्म्यांना कंट्रोल करणारा जो मांत्रिक आहे, जो गुरु आहे, that kind of thing is an enchanter. So here the leaves are compared to the ghosts running away because of the power of the enchanter. So here the leaves are the ghosts as if, and the west wind is the enchanter. West wind has the power to control them. Yellow and black and pale and hectic red. Now this is a very beautiful line in which the speaker, the poet, describes the color of those leaves that are running away, that are flying away, that they are yellow and black and pale and hectic red, flushed kind of red. Pestilence stricken multitude. Another image of the pestilence stricken. Pestilence, the pandemic. Like this going on, that is corona. It's a pandemic, and it is affecting multitudes, so many people at the same time. Okay, pestilence stricken multitudes. So these leaves are compared to the people, the multitudes affected by some kind of pestilence, some kind of viral disease like corona in the present context. Pestilence stricken multitudes. O you, O thou, who chariotest to their dark wintry bed. So he says, you become a kind of chariot, rath, a vehicle, car, who chariotest to their dark wintry bed. Dark wintry bed is a kind of metaphor for the grave of the seeds. That is, the seeds are buried underground in the winter season. That comes, who chariotest to their dark wintry bed, the winged seeds. The seeds are winged. They are with the wings. The seeds are flying because of the power of the west wind. The winged seeds, where they lie cold and low. So these seeds they lie cold and low in the winter season, each like a corpse, the dead body, each like a corpse. So this is a simile used, corpse is a simile used for the seeds which lie underground, okay, buried under the earth surface, each like a corpse within its grave, until thine azure sister, azure, the blue color of the sky blue color, thine azure, thine means your, azure sister of the spring shall blow. So it is the azure sister of the spring is the west wind of the spring season shall blow. So after the winter is over, spring comes, and during the spring season, these seeds which are buried under the earth in the winter season, they will bloom into plants and trees, and fruits will come out, flowers will come out of those seeds. Thine azure sister of the spring shall blow her clarion is the shrill voice of the war trumpet. Okay, it's a musical instrument. Her clarion over the dreaming earth, and spring season will spread its voice, spread its noise all over the earth, who is the dreaming earth. So everywhere you find another very beautiful figure of speech here, that is the personification. The wind is given human qualities, earth is described as dreaming, that is earth is also given human qualities. So when the poet attributes human qualities, human attributes, human features to non-human things, that figure of speech becomes the personification. Her clarion over the dreaming earth, and feel with living hues, hue, color, and odors, scents, plain and hill. And in the bracket there is another line, driving sweet birds like flocks to feed in air. So the seeds will be driven later on in the spring season, and they will bloom into flowers, and they will bloom into forests and trees and various plants, and they will fill the atmosphere with lots of colors and lots of scents, sweet scents, the plain and the hill, the plain land as well as the hilly land as well as the mountains. So this is the contrasting picture. The west wind of the autumn season takes the seeds underground, and the west wind of the spring season, it brings them out. Okay, it converts them into flowers and trees and plants and the greenery, in the beautiful greenery, wild spirit. So these are the three stir sets. Okay, and the couplet, the last couplet, the last two lines of this first canto, wild spirit, addressed to the west winds. He says, you are wild, you are terrible, you are a terrific spirit, which art spirit chetna. Okay, which art is archaic form of are, which art moving everywhere. So you are a wild spirit and you move everywhere, destroyer and preserver. Here, oh here. So here he calls the speaker Shelley, B Shelly, the poet, the great romantic poets. He calls the west wind as destroyer as well as preserver. So you destroy the leaves, you take them underground, you disturb them, you blow them away, you take away the seeds, you bury them under the ground, and again in the springs, that's why you are the destroyer. Okay, and then again you bring them out in the open atmosphere in the spring season, and they bloom, they flourish into flowers and trees and forests. And that means you are the destroyer as well as the preserver. So this is the antithesis. Okay, this is the kind of paradox. Another very beautiful figures of speech. The west wind is addressed as the destroyer as well as the preserver. So here in the first canto, the speaker, the poet, describes the west wind and what it does to the leaves and the seeds. Okay, now let us move on to the second canto. Thou on whose stream, on whose flow, the west wind, the flow of the west wind, the gushing forth of the west wind. Thou on whose stream, mid is amid, mid the steep, extremely high. Steep skies commotion. Now what happens? The second canto, as I told you earlier, the second canto describes the power of the west wind and what it does to the sky, what it does to the air, another element. Thou on whose stream mid the steep skies commotion, commotion, lots of noise, agitation. Loose clouds like earth's decaying leaves are shed. And this time there are clouds in the sky, and due to the force, due to the powerful blowing of the west wind, the clouds are disturbed. Okay. Loose clouds like earth's decaying leaves are shed, shook from the tangled bows of heaven and ocean. Angels of rain and lightning. So because of the west wind, the clouds are shaken. Okay, they are moved from the tangled bows, tangled, complicated, complex. Bows are the branches of heaven and ocean, angels of rain and lightning. So what happens? Because the west wind blows the clouds, there come the angels of rain and lightning. Rain starts, lightning starts because of the force of the west wind. So this is the west wind. This is how the west wind affects the sky. It blows the clouds, it shakes the clouds, and rain starts. Angels of rain and lightning come. There are spread on the blue surface of thine airy surge, like the bright hair uplifted from the head of some fierce Maenad. Now there is this image of the fierce, is angry, terrible, horrible Maenad. Maenad is the follower, the votary, woman worshipper, or woman votary, or woman follower of the Greek god of wine and vegetation. That is it's Dionysius. In Greek mythology it's Dionysius, and in Roman mythology it's the god Bacchus. Like Hindu mythology, there are lots of number of gods, deities, gods and goddesses described in the Greek and Roman mythology. So here Maenad is a follower, is a female worshipper of the god, the Greek god Dionysius, and it's this Maenad has the terrible hair, and in a fit of madness or frenzy, they bow down in front of the god. So he says, the angels of rain and lightning and the terrible atmosphere is described with the help of this imagery of the Maenad, the fierce Maenad, the follower of god Dionysius. Angels of rain and lightning, there are spread on the blue surface of thine airy surge. Thine, your, that is the west wind's airy force. So rain and lightning are coming, and they are described with the help of this image of the hair, uplifted hair of Maenad. Okay. of some fierce menard, even from the dim verge of the horizon to the zenith's height. So everywhere you can see this rain and lightning from horizon to the zenith. Horizon, is the imaginary line where the sky and the earth seem to meet one another, and zenith is the highest point above in the sky. The locks of the approaching storm. So here, locks the hair. The locks of the curls, approaching storm. So these clouds, they are equated, they are described with the beautiful imagery of the menard, or they are considered as the lock or the curls of the approaching storm. So this is the reaction of the west wind on uh, the sky and the air, and what happens to the clouds. Thou dirge is a kind of elegy, is a kind of lament, song of lament, and typically it's a song sung in the funeral procession. Okay, so he says, you are the dirge. West wind is now considered as a kind of lament of the dying year. Okay, the year is coming to an end. So west wind is considered as the song of the dying year, because the year is coming to an end. To which this closing night will be the dome of a vast sepulchre. Dome is the rounded part on any building architecture. Sepulchre is the vaulted building of say some church or some tomb. Will be the dome of a vast sepulchre, vaulted with all thy congregated might. So he says, this night will be a kind of grave, a kind of vault. Vault is a room specially designed to bury or to put the dead bodies. Okay, after death. Vaulted with all thy congregated might. Might is the strength of vapors from whose solid atmosphere black rain and fire and hell will burst. Oh, here. So this is how the wind affects the sky, and what will happen? There will be black rain and fire and hell. Hell, the pellets of frozen rain, gara. So this is how the second canto comes to an end, in which the poet very beautifully describes the effect of the west wind on the sky, and particularly how the clouds are disturbed and it starts raining. And to describe this terrible atmosphere, he takes help of the image of the Maenad from the Greek mythology. Now the third canto. Thou who didst waken from his summer dreams, the blue Mediterranean Sea, Bhumadhya Samudra. This is the sea surrounded on all the sides by soil. There is on one side Europe and Africa, Mid Asia. So it is the Mediterranean Sea. Thou who, and this canto describes the effect of west wind on water, on sea, the third major element. Thou who didst waken, to wake up somebody, waken from his summer dream. So again, personification, the sea, that is particularly the Mediterranean Sea, as if is sleeping, and west wind wakes him up. Personification, the sea is considered as a human being sleeping, and who disturbs this sleep? West wind, the forceful west wind. Thou who didst waken from his summer dreams the blue Mediterranean, where he lay, lulled by the coil of his crystalline streams. Crystalline, crystal clear, स्फटिकासारखं स्वच्छ, सुंदर, clear. Streams are the brooks. Lulled by, lullaby, angai, lulled to sleep by the coil of his crystalline stream. The sea, Mediterranean Sea, is as if sleeping because of the coil, the lullaby sung by its clear, beautiful, crystalline streams. Beside a pumice isle, pumice is the stone formed by a kind of lava. Beside a pumice isle, isle is the small island, in Bay, Khadi, that is where the part of the sea enters the earth. Okay, and Bay is a location near the seashore of Italy. Okay, it's a part of Italy near Naples. And it was, Bay was an important town, an important city of the Roman Empire, and now it is under the sea. The ruins of that Roman city are there underwater. रोमन साम्राज्याच्या काळातलं एक मोठं शहर बेई ज्याचं नाव होतं आणि ते अजूनही समुद्राच्या खाली अवशेष सापडतात. तर इथं शेली त्या इमेजेसचा वापर करतो. कशासाठी? वेस्ट विंड ह्या वाऱ्याचा प्रभाव समुद्रावर, पाणी हे जे महत्वाचं तत्व आहे त्यावर कसा पडतो. Beside a pumice isle in Bay's Bay, and it is all in the Mediterranean Sea, and saw in sleep old palaces and towers. And in the sleep, the Mediterranean Sea can see the old palaces and towers. Towered buildings and old palaces can be seen under the water when the sea is sleeping. Quivering within the waves' intenser day, quivering, shaking. Within the waves' intenser day, when the waves are intense, तीव्र असतात लाटा. When the waves are forceful, these palaces and towers under the water, they can be seen shaking. All overgrown with azure moss and flowers. Moss, shevar. And these are overgrown. These buildings underwater, they are covered by moss. They are covered by sea flowers. All overgrown with, so it's a very beautiful image, and this is the particular characteristic of romantic poetry. This is romantic poetry. The poet equates everything. He presents nature, all the aspects of nature in a very, very beautiful manner. This is romanticism. Nature plays the key role in this poetry. This is personal. This is about nature. All overgrown with azure moss and flowers, so sweet. The sense Janiva. The sense faints, picturing them. Even describing them makes somebody faint, senseless, because it is so intoxicating. Okay, it makes one faint. Shuddha harapti. Okay, so sweet the sense faints, picturing them. Thou for whose path the Atlantic's level powers cleave themselves into chasms. Cleave, split. Now there is the reference to the Atlantic Sea. So he says when the west wind comes, even the Atlantic Ocean, the ocean between Europe and America, okay, so it splits to make way, to make a road for the west wind. With the here Shelley wants to portray the west wind as a spirit that is very powerful, and even the Atlantic Sea splits, gets separated to make room, to make way for the west wind. cleave themselves into chasms. Chasm is the deep fissure in earth, deep crack in earth. So there are cracks in the sea here, in the Atlantic Sea, because of the force of the west wind. Cleave themselves into chasms. So here he describes the effect of the west wind on Mediterranean Sea as well as on the Atlantic Ocean. Cleave themselves into chasms while far below, while under the water, the sea blooms. There are, because underwater it's a very beautiful and different world. Okay, so there are various kinds of flowers blooming underwater. So here he uses those things. The sea blooms, those images, the sea blooms and oozy woods, oozy, dripping, or where the moisture is coming out. Okay, oozy woods, flower forests are there, which wear the sapless foliage of the ocean. So there is this sapless foliage, the dry foliage, leaves are there of the ocean. Know thy voice. And he says, even that underwater forests, the sea blooms, they know your power, that the west wind is coming. It is so powerful. And suddenly grow grey with fear. And even the underwater blooms, the flowers, the vegetation, that starts shaking with fear, because the west wind is that powerful. Thy voice and suddenly grow grey with fear and tremble. They are afraid of. Thar kapne. They shake and tremble and despoil themselves. Despoil. Violently remove, get disturbed themselves. Oh, here. So again, it is addressed to the west wind. So this is how, in the first three cantos, the poet describes the effect of the west wind on, first, the earth, second, on the sky. What happens to, first, what happens to the leaves, to the seeds? They are buried underground. That's why he says you are the destroyer. And they come out in the spring season and they bloom into forest. That's why he says you are the preserver. And in the second canto, he describes how the west wind disturbs the clouds on in the sky, and bringing angels of rain and lightning, and that's how rain comes. And in the third canto, Shelley describes the effect of west wind on water, on the Mediterranean Sea as well as on the Atlantic Ocean. Let us turn to the fourth canto. So here is his wish. Now the poem becomes very, very personal. Okay. If I were a dead leaf, thou mightest bear. So he says, if I were a dead leaf, you might have carried me with your force. If I were a swift cloud, if I were a quickly moving cloud, to fly with thee. He says, this is his wish. Okay, this is his wishful thinking. He is as if saying, I wish that I could have been a leaf, so that I could have traveled with your force. I could have been a cloud, a wave to pant beneath thy power and share.